Hello and welcome. We're coming to you live from the Hindustan Times headquarters in New Delhi. We're focusing sharp attention on online abuse. We're running a special series called Let's Talk About Trolls, and I have a very special guest joining me today, well-known journalist, author and anchor, Barkha Dutt. Barkha, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you,
and
Jamal.
for writing such a powerful piece. You actually get it the most on social media. You've been called the worst kind of names, and I think let's not shy away from using those words so that people know that these are the words which are abusive. You cannot call anybody a randi, a whore, a slut, a prostitute. Was it very difficult for you in the beginning to deal with this kind of abuse? Because, you know, we're doing a job here.
Yeah. I think initially it was very hurtful. When I first came onto Twitter or I first embraced social media, I was younger. I didn't fully understand what this meant. I was gobsmacked that people were using this kind of language. I was okay to be criticized. I understand I'm a person in the public space. People are going to like me, or like my work, hate my work. But there's a certain sort of, a framework of civility, which I was used to expecting. And initially I was hurt. Then I was angry. I would fight. I would argue. I would react. And then I understood that that's exactly what they want. And here's the dilemma, and that's something I bring up in my column for the Hindustan Times, and I must congratulate you guys for doing this because, for too long, all of us have just sat back and said, okay, this is the rites of passage. Ye to hame sehna hi padega. It's become like some new version of boot camp that, you toughen up by doing this. Why?
No, that's why we're saying let's talk about trolls, because it's really something we need to talk about.
And yet, here's the dilemma. The thing that bugs them the most is if you ignore them. Yet to ignore them is also a kind of acceptance. And I'm not willing to accept this anymore. I'm not willing to accept particularly the way women are targeted. I'm 45 years old. I've seen a bit of life. I've been a journalist for 22 years now. But think of a Gurmeher, who was your lead columnist in this, your first Facebook Live. I think of somebody like her. She's a 20-something college student. Do we want her to have the sort of psychological mettle at this point to deal with this kind of rubbish that was thrown her way? So we have to also understand that we have to speak up for younger women. You and I, we're tough nuts. We've seen a lot of shit in our lives. We know how to deal with this. Maybe we weren't always like that. And I think of what I may have felt when I was 21 years old if this was happening to me.
Precisely, like you made the point that you're in the public life, so some amount of criticism will come your way.
Absolutely.
But the Gurmeher course,
what have they done?
Yeah, and for a video that is 1 year old.
No, and for having a point of view. See, what really bothers me in this is, I find that you're targeted if you have a point of view that at that moment is not the dominant narrative, which Gurmeher's clearly was not. 2, if you're female and you have a point of view that is not the dominant narrative, it's double jeopardy. And let's not shy away from this. After I wrote this piece, and I said this in the piece in Hindustan Times, I said that tough women are so defensive, we don't want to appear whiny. So a lot of times we don't say anything because we don't want to play victim. And the point is that in this silence of not supposedly playing victims, we are being made victims of, and we are becoming complicit in this culture of abuse. And I want to make another point. This is violence. It's not, it is rape threats. It is threats of murder. It is sexually loaded, not just innuendo, but the words that are used. This under law would qualify as actually abusing a woman. And yet, I've tried magistrate.
Yes.
Nothing came of it. And people are frustrated. They don't know how to deal with it. What I want to say today is that the one thing we should not do is ever go off these mediums. Though I have great contempt at one level for Twitter for its complete failure to do anything about this. I think that they must take part of the responsibility, but I'm not going to go off it either. I'm not going to let these people own the medium or own my mind.
We're live with Barkha discussing online abuse. Do send in your questions and we'll try and take as many as we can. Barkha, coming back to the point about violence, there was actually somebody who said that Gurmeher deserves to be treated like Nirbhaya. And you're absolutely right. Other online platforms are just not doing enough to curb what is clearly a huge menace.
I think they're enjoying the theatrics or what they think is theatrical, or the numbers that follow, or the conversation around it. And I think the platforms are responsible.
So I asked Gurmeher a very, pointed question. Did Facebook or Twitter approach you when you got death threats and rape threats? Because they were there for everybody to see. Surely people who run these platforms ought to know.
Yeah.
And neither one of them had approached her. Now that I find completely unacceptable.
I would take it one step further. I would say if you approach them, it's unlikely that they will say anything but report abuse. And what is this report abuse? I mean, you report it, if enough people report it, then maybe that account gets suspended, that person comes back with another name.
With another name, absolutely.
So the real question is the acceptance. There is acceptance, there is political acceptance, there is social acceptance. And because there is acceptance, these guys aren't being kicked off. When I say kicked off, I don't mean physically, I mean metaphorically. That there is a permissibility around this kind of conversation. Everyone says, oh, it's terrible. But is anyone shunning the people who talk like this?
There's enough available online for them to continue what they're doing. Which brings me to the point. I mean, I've certainly felt it. And, there was a time when I felt that, okay, and this applies to you as well as to me, because we do write on issues concerning national security. Yeah. We write on Kashmir, we write on Pakistan. Now, just the word Pakistan seems to have become anti-national on the online world. And the way they come at you, it's like a well-oiled machine.
It's obviously organized, right? Let's not make any bones. I don't know who organizes it. I don't know how it's organized. But how can it be that all of these many disparate voices have the same view? There's also this kind of fake news propaganda that, you say Pakistan, you try and make an argument about Kashmir, they'll totally twist it. I remember a few months ago, I was in Kashmir and there was curfew, and I had taken a ride with a complete stranger. I didn't know him because the car refused to go because there was stone pelting happening. So I hitched a ride, my cameraman and I, and this is a guy with a beard. I didn't know his name. He dropped me till the village I had to reach, and my story ran on air, and all these people on Twitter isolated that image and said that this is the next Burhan Wani, this is the successor to Burhan Wani, and Barkha is with this terrorist on the back of his motorcycle near the border. Now, when I recounted, it seems so absurd that it's funny. But would you know how many times it was circulated, it was made to seem as if it were true, to the extent that I find even government agencies, ministers, people in the army, people in the BSF, they are wary now, and they'll say, yaar, आपको ये इंटरव्यू देंगे तो बहुत गाली पड़ेगा ट्विटर पे, आपको ये एक्सेस देंगे तो बहुत गाली पड़ेगा ट्विटर पे. So what is this, Shami? What we're really talking about is a tool of intimidation to obstruct journalists from doing their job. You want to create such a culture of intimidation and abuse that people who you would need to do your job suddenly step back and become apprehensive about giving you that openness of information because they say gali padega. So what is it? It's just a way of silencing. It's a way of silencing journalists. It's a way of silencing women. It's a way of silencing independent minds.
And like you said, let's make no bones about it. Let's also discuss the fact that the Prime Minister of this country is following some people who are abusive trolls.
And the thing is, I can accept the argument that, for example, I do follow people and I don't always know what they're saying, right? Which is the point that a lot of the BJP people have made, that are you accountable for what every person who follows you says? But
if the abuse is brought to your attention,
that's right. That's what I was going to say.
You can unfollow.
That's right. What I was going to say is that now that this has become such a big... I totally take the point that at some point Mr. Modi or some other politician starts following someone. Because you're in public life, you follow a lot of people, you're not always reading their tweets, you don't know. But once you know, and you know that this is such a large part of the conversation today, you would hope that the Prime Minister and every other politician from every party would stop encouraging this kind of language. I'm not saying only the Prime Minister, I'm saying every party across parties. Because I remember once I said this to Smriti Irani and she said, no, but you people don't stand up for us when women on the right of centre are trolled. And I said, no, we do. And I would stand up for Smriti Irani, and I hope Smriti Irani would stand up for me. And that is how it should be. This is not a party political issue.
It is not. But tell me, do you notice, because you've been on Twitter for a while, so have I, that since the BJP came to power, do you think the abuse has got more vicious than it was earlier, or is it just a coincidence?
See, what I would say is that the BJP was the first user of social media in politics. They were, and they were definitely able to use this to great advantage as an instrument of political communication. And I think parties like the Congress are desperately playing catch up right now. So one has to actually give them credit for being smart about their communication. Two, I think maybe we feel, you and I feel more targeted by the BJP because of the issues we cover, where some of the positions we take are red rags for not the BJP per se, but their hardcore base, their hardline base, right? So, for example, if you try and make the point, which you have made, which I have made, and we've been making it for the last, I don't know how long, that Kashmir is getting worse. It's getting worse. Don't be in denial, it's getting worse. For saying that it's getting worse, you will be immediately attacked and be called anti-national. Now, nationalism is a political, it's a sentiment, yes, but it's also a very big political cornerstone of the BJP's ideology. So, because of the issues we write about, the Gaurakshaks, the beefmans, we certainly tend to attract the right wing.
Singing the national anthem
before
a movie, after a movie.
We attract the right wing. I am not, and I don't self-identify as left, by the way. I identify as a liberal, but not left. But I don't know what it feels like to be in the skin of, let's say, a woman who's on the other side of the ideological trenches from me. What does she experience? You know, every time I raise this with Ms. Irani, she says, you have no idea what the kind of names I am called. So maybe there is a counterpoint that we haven't experienced. My experience has certainly been with the right wing.
So my
experience has been with the right wing. I'm saying that. My experience has been with the right wing.
So let me also put it in record that we invited Smriti Irani to be part of this campaign. Okay. Maybe she was busy.
Yeah.
Whatever her reasons, she declined. So I'm saying it's also important to join the conversation. You know, instead of just saying trolls are only not just right wing, and I agree they're not just only right wing.
Yeah, that's the point I'm making. I'm saying maybe our experience has been that because of the positions we have on certain issues.
Correct.
But I'd be very happy to hear from Madhu Kishwar, who abuses me day in and day out.
She is writing a piece for this campaign.
But you know, and let's also say that, I make that point in my piece, that it's not just men who are abusing women. You know,
women
are also abusing other women, and some women have embraced this word prostitute. There are women who've argued that it's a perfectly legitimate word.
And lip-turned.
Yes. So, you know, this is not male versus female. And patriarchy, in any case of misogyny, is gender neutral. I mean, we're all a product of our socialization.
Absolutely. We continue to be live with Barkha Dutt. Do send in your questions. Barkha, I think we do have actually some questions. Let's take them. Sharib Ahmed, kindly talk about the traditional loss of tolerance culture among Indians. I mean, again, in the context of trolling, is that loss of tolerance leading to more abusive behavior?
You know, what I feel has changed is that I feel that there's the space for conversation has shrunk. Like, I don't remember the country. Now, why has it happened? Is it because of social media? Is it a phase that we're going through? Is it a global trend? There is a certain kind of populism and a nativism that is driving conversations around the world, right? I've seen this happening in the United States of America as well. But there, I think, because there are just two political parties and two ideologies, it's this very neatly divided, you're this side or you're this side, right? We're a much more diverse country. We have a plurality not just of religions and creeds, we have a plurality of opinion. What I find is really scary is that plurality is shrinking. You know, you have to constantly prove that you're patriotic, that you're Indian, that you also love your country, that you also have its best interests at heart, that you know that you're not, that you're honest, that you have integrity. You're constantly being put on test for something or the other.
Prove to whom? To people who don't even understand.
They want you to prove. I refuse to prove it to them. But they want you to, you know, jump through hoops and constantly prove yourself. And so this word tolerance has become a bit of a cliche, so I don't want to use it. What I think is it's the death of conversation. There is no conversation anymore. There's shouting on television. There's shouting on social media. Where's the conversation? I'm hoping the digital space restores some of that and proves that the digital space is not given necessarily only to polarities, which is something that television certainly has become a victim of.
Absolutely. Let's take another question. It comes from Saeed Hussain. How do you handle trolls? I mean, we've covered it in bits, but are there times when when you react because you're so angry? And on the flip side, are you so hurt sometimes that you withdraw into a shell?
I think the second has happened to me when I first started. That, you know, after exhausting myself from arguing, there were times And I've seen that happening to so many of my colleagues. There are people who've just gone off Twitter. There are people who've just shut their accounts and they've gone off Twitter because they can't deal with the constant poison. So there was a time when I retreated into a bit of a shell, but that was many years ago. Then I took this other route of arguing. Then I found that I was mentally exhausted. And did I really want to be exhausted from arguing with these keyboard warriors, who'll say, what did they say about you, that you and I should be also hung to a jeep and dragged around like Farooq Dar was in Srinagar? Now, we can debate that episode
and
separately.
taken to Pakistan.
And taken to Pakistan.
Because we're ISI.
No, I have been told not just that I've been threatened with rape, that I've been told there's a right in the piece that who would rape you, drawing this association between sexual violence and desire, which is not what it's about, as we all know. This is about crude, coarse power. And how do I deal with trolls? I am not always silent. I do mostly not engage, but there are times when either I'm so irritated that I react, even though it's probably not the smart thing to do, because it is a mind game. And it's about who's blinking first, and there's this constant it's almost like psychological warfare. And so sometimes I react despite myself. Mostly now, I've understood that what really bugs them is that you haven't modified your opinion. You haven't altered what you're going to say. You're going to say it anyway. But the only scary thing is there was a time when I thought it was only words. I'm no longer sure. I have seen the hatred spill over into actual stalking. I went to a magistrate finally when I would get 100 calls a day from different numbers, and they were internet calls, so you couldn't trace the numbers, threatening to rape me. I could hear 10 men in the room all laughing into the speakerphone. And, I went and stood in Saket Metropolitan Court. I said, it was no longer just words. And there are times that you do worry for your safety. I mean, you do. I've been in really dangerous situations, but there the danger is defined by conflict. Here, the danger presents itself as some mob, and we assume it's an online mob. Who's to say tomorrow this lynch mob won't become a real mob?
So, the third part of the series, Let's Talk About Trolls. Actually, tomorrow we have a psychiatrist writing on how to deal with trolling and explaining exactly what you're saying, that the online abusers are actually the real life gundas.
That's right. So I'm not so sure that disconnect, and that's what worries me, that this acceptance, even when you think of Pehlu Khan, who was beaten up by a mob in Rajasthan,
Alwar.
right? In Alwar. And I keep thinking that what's really dangerous about trolling is we are creating a culture, we're creating a rule of the mob. Right? And that's why I don't think it's innocuous and I don't think it's harmless, because I think tomorrow something very dangerous could happen to somebody. This online mob could go offline and be
Absolutely.
the gundas, be the violent gundas that they are in their words and thoughts in action. And then what will we say about trolling?
And I mean, sometimes I don't understand how mindless they can be, because, on one hand they appear to be these patriotic, nationalistic, flag-waving Indians, and then you see the same people trolling the most respected generals that the Indian Army has given us. You take General Panag's example. It's happened in the last 48 hours. And famous people, I will not take their names, with large followings, who sing songs in Bollywood, have called him a traitor and a Pakistani, and how he deserves to be, dragged into Pakistan and left there.
I think what happened to General Panag is absolutely shameful, but I'm going to take this a step further and turn the gaze inwards on us as media people. What I find really sickening is that the singer who attacked General Panag, he will be given TV time on respectable channels. And, they will call them, this controversy will then be debated on television. Now, there's nothing wrong with debating the controversy, but there is a kind of legitimization or a kind of normalization process happens where these kind of guys with their outrageous kind of demented comments get to set the agenda of primetime news in the evening. And, you actually have this sort of theatrics playing out where some extremist will be invited. The television anchor will then get into some apoplectic rage and shout at him or agree with him. We've also seen those instances because, nationalism in courts. I always say in courts because I'm not going to let them define my nationalism for me.
Precisely.
And so it isn't just restricted to social media. The real danger is that trolls are setting agendas. Trolls are setting agendas where they're scaring off officials, they're scaring off government, and they are setting the agendas for mainline newsrooms. And that's what terrifies me. And where is journalism going?
That's a good question to ponder on.
Yeah.
Certainly. Let's take another question. Comes from Pratik. Do you think terms like Sangis and hate tags are as abusive and condescending as libtards and other monikers thrown at people with diverse political views? Let me add to that question, Barkha. We were talking about the trolling industry being, a very well-oiled machine.
Yeah.
And we know that it's not just the BJP which
Right.
hires an army of people who control you.
Right.
The Aam Aadmi Party, other parties,
Yeah.
they're all guilty of the same. So let's, so it's
I think it's a fair question.
It's a very fair question.
It's a very fair question because, we also have to reflect that we use words like bhaks and sangis with such ease, right? And we get so annoyed when words like prostitute. Now, I have a different problem with prostitute because I think it's a gendered smear. And it has nothing to do with my own politics on sex workers and prostitutes, which is a different debate. But it's a gendered smear, and so I have a problem with it. As with whore, randi, slut, and so on. But keeping the issue of gender aside for just one moment, I think it's a fair point to say that if you don't want to be labelled, don't box other people in. I think it's also a fair point to say that as other parties play catch up, we are also seeing some of them, they don't use maybe this kind of abuse necessarily, but you make a critical comment about Rahul Gandhi. Oh, you're sold out. You've just sold out. Oh, you're one of those people who sold out to Modi, right? So I find this hilarious because we spend 90% of our time getting abused by the right wing. And then when we want to critique the opposition trollers who are also obviously as organized now or are trying to be, will also attack you, maybe not with the same ferocity because the tropes are different for them, their red flags are different. But try criticizing Mr. Gandhi and see what happens. There is obviously some machinery that kicks in.
Absolutely. So
not abusively, but it kicks in. It questions your integrity.
It's across the political spectrum.
Yes, it is.
Yeah. Let's take another question. Junaid Malik, does it mean being fearless and outspoken and pro-truth is being anti-national?
See, I wrote a piece saying that nationalism is the new Hindutva. Like, I think what's happened is that what Hindutva was to the 90s, I think nationalism has become to the politics of today. It's much smarter as a political slogan because it doesn't have that same obvious sort of coarseness. Everyone wants to self-identify as a nationalist. Who doesn't? Including you and me. We just don't want our nationalism to be dictated to by a set of political agendas. Anybody's political agendas, right? So this word anti-national, what does it mean anymore? Like, I think it just basically means that if you do not stand up and take the same view as 90% of a given populace at that time wants you to,
which has the mentality of a mob at that point of time.
Which has the mentality of a mob, then you're anti. I want to say here that I also find people on the left of the spectrum, which we haven't spoken about, to be extremely dogmatic and quick to label as well. So, for example, you know
but that was the question, yeah.
And you know this because you spent so many years covering the military, and I've spent some time covering them as well. I don't have the traditional pacifist. I'm not an Arundhati. I always say that I'm not Arundhati Roy and I'm not Orna Goswami. There has to be some space in the middle that I would like to own. I don't, think that the nation state is an evil construct. I'm a proud Indian.
Absolutely.
I am, and I like and admire our forge. And I think that some of the wisest statements have come from army generals during periods of unrest, much wiser than politicians. But the left will want you to. The left of any argument, the extreme left will want you to shun that as well, right? And therefore, we live in an extremely dogmatic age. And if you're a free thinker, if you're an individual, kind of free-spirited person, or a free-spirited mind, forget what you are as a person, you really feel claustrophobic on, thanks to trolls.
Yeah,
it's
because, this judgmental, they immediately want to put you in a box.
Yes.
Pigeonhole you, stereotype you, slot you.
Yeah.
Because if they don't, then they don't understand who you are or what you stand for.
Yeah,
so they will decide who you are.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's suffocating. And you have to it's like being in deep water. You have to rise above it and
take
breathe.
A breath.
Yes, and you have to rise above it and breathe. Because they want to push you down there. They want that you don't speak. They want to change how you think. And if they can't change how you think, they want you to be scared enough to never express their opinion. And you can't let them do that.
So what I can understand, and like we've discussed earlier, we have thick skins, right? We've been around for too long. We've covered difficult beats. We've learned the art of survival. But abuse can also be very personal when it comes, especially to women. If you're married, why are you married to so and so? If you're not married, why you're not married? Who will marry you?
Right.
You chose to speak about child abuse, which is something that needs to be dealt with very sensitively. You were trolled even for that.
No, I was told who would abuse you? Look at how you look. Who would abuse you? Or attention seeking, or oh, you're one of those feminists who has rape fantasies. I mean, this is, and I've written this in my column, for Hindustan Times. And what does it do? What it does is it makes women feel that if even Barkha is going to get trolled like this, I better not speak up, because if she, with all her, in their perception, with her clout or her public profile, gets trolled like this, if I, who's not known, also want to speak about what happened to me when I was a 10-year-old child, it scares people away, which is what I'm saying. It creates the culture of silence, and that's what really bothers me. It's pushing other women, especially, possibly, into silence, and that is a cause of concern, right? And also on this marriage, I keep, if I make a statement, Kashmir, they say, oh, but you're married, Kashmiri, but I'm not married. And my point is, initially I would say, but I'm not married, then I would laugh about it, then I would get irritated. Now it's just like nothing seems to make a difference. It really is the post-truth world, right? You keep saying this, and why do you say it? Because you want to create this construct that you're married to a Kashmiri Muslim.
Of course.
And that explains these horrible in their mind, these horrible politics that you have. That's why you're pro-Muslim. What does it mean to be pro-Muslim? That's why you're pro-Kashmiri. What does all this mean? I mean, I don't understand. Are you saying you only want that piece of land? Yeah?
Yes.
And that's what I'm beginning to feel, that most of these trolls, tomorrow, if every single Kashmiri Muslim left the valley, I think there's a suggestion here that we don't care. Please leave.
Of course. It's more than a suggestion.
Yeah, they say go to Pakistan.
Yes. So it's not in the realm of a suggestion. It's out there in the open. Tell me, given the kind of abuse, the amount of abuse that comes your way, have you ever thought of days, few hours? No.
No, it actually induces the opposite reaction in me, because I can see that there's such a concerted attempt to get me off, or if not get me off, like wear me down, or literally batter me with words and abuse into thinking a different way, or into not going against the grain. And I just feel like, I think if I were younger, I think it would have impacted me differently. I have to recognize that. I think I would have been much more vulnerable to whatever was that dominant narrative was. Today, I just feel like, it's okay for me. I don't care if you don't like me. I don't care if you abuse me. I don't care. Does it make it all right for you to talk like that? No. But am I personally going to let you own my emotion or my mind? No, I'm not going to. But I do recognize that this is really psychologically difficult. You have to be like us. You have to be as thick-skinned, and not everybody is.
Teflon coated.
Yes, and not everybody is. And why are we expecting younger people to be like that? They should be able to demand better and ask for better.
There is actually a study which was done with 500 social media users. And I think 15 to 20% of them said they actually went off the platform.
I've seen colleagues. I have seen colleagues saying, I don't know how you do it. I'm just going off. Even if they're not scared, they find it mentally exhausting, and they feel that they can't deal with it. But there's something even more dangerous happening. I've seen colleagues who stay on it and who start saying things where you're like, why are they saying this? And then you realize that, okay, they're saying this because they desperately want the popularity of the trolls. They want to be popular. When journalists seek popularity, it's death of journalism. You have to have the gumption to be unpopular, because you have to put out one new thought, shake somebody's mind, alter somebody's way of thinking.
So the number of retweets is the new TRP?
In some ways it is, isn't it? It has become. And look at TV newsrooms. I'm telling you, I've been in a newsroom. I say this from experience, that Twitter has become the new PTI. And you have news editors of television newsrooms who say, this is trending on Twitter. And but you know what? It's a good thing today. Let's talk about trolls is trending. I actually hope that somebody will pick this up. But what newsrooms do is they legitimize the trolls by picking up their hashtags.
Of course.
And then discussing those and almost modifying their content so that they get the approval of the trolls.
I understand what you're saying. I think we're running out of time. Let's end with Mohammed Sharif's question. What's the way out? What's the way forward?
I think it's campaigns like this. I think it's to put it out there. I think it's to own the conversation. For too long we have let trolls own the conversation. Why are we letting trolls own the conversation? We can own this conversation. We can have, we can also set the narrative. Maybe we'll never be the dominant narrative. Maybe we'll never have the maximum retweets. Maybe we'll never have the sort of the populist mood with us. But there are constituencies who want people like us to speak up, maybe because they can't themselves. And maybe if we do, it will encourage more people to speak.
Absolutely. Thanks, Barkha.
Thank
Thanks
you.
so much
Thank
for
you
coming
so
in.
much.
Keep following us. There are many more parts to this special series. Let's talk about trolls. You can read it on www.hindustantimes.com. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.